morning, this is Leonard Smith from Sense Memory, and I have taken a little time off to really study these perfumes I'm going to be talking to you about today. So that's why I've been away for a while. So stay tuned for something very exciting. So, I've got 3 fragrances that were sent to me by the fabulous Fabio Condé from Brazil. Now, some of you may know him as a great fragrance reviewer here on YouTube. And one of the things about his reviews that I loved were that they were in Portuguese with English subtitles. So that's how I got to know him, because I loved his reviews. I loved his take on fragrances. And I love that he took the time to translate his reviews into English so that he could have a wider audience with the rest of us outside of Brazil and Portugal who don't speak Portuguese and are dying to know what he had to say about these wonderful fragrances. So about a week and a half ago, this arrived in the mail in this fabulous packaging from Fabio, and it's his first initial 3 fragrances from his house, the House of Condé. And, oops, that one just a little fell off there a little bit. And the packaging is really wonderful. You can see here that each of the fragrances has the name on it in this beautiful gold dispensers. And it's the attention to detail is just great. I mean, usually for samples, you get a little bitty, tiny little, little glass vial, might be a dabber, maybe a sprayer, but Fabio went the extra mile here with these incredible presentations for just the samples. So let's get on with it. Now, the thing I need to tell you about this house has an incredible history. Fabio's family, the Condé family, are descendants of French royalty. And the most famous of his ancestors is Louis de Bourbon, the Grand Condé, Le Grand Condé, and he was alive in the 16th century at the time of Marie de Medici ruling France, the Queen of France, and Queen Elizabeth in England. And he was a very famous royal, and he was involved in many battles. And after a particular battle in Italy, he was coming back to France and stopped at a church and was converted from Catholicism to Protestantism. And he became a very huge force in the Huguenot movement in France, the French Protestant movement in France. The family had several estates, which I'll put some pictures up for you of these particular homes that were simply amazing. One of them is the Chateau Chantilly, which is very famous French chateau. And there is also the Castle de Condé, I believe it is called. I'll put pictures up and you can see it. And also a picture of Le Grand Duc Condé. And unfortunately, because of this religious persecution, the Huguenots were expelled from France eventually, went all over the world. His particular family, the Condé family of Fabio, went to first Portugal and then moved with the royal court of Portugal to Brazil. And they were granted lands in Brazil. Now, interestingly enough, some of my ancestors were Huguenots also and came to the United States. So there's that wonderful little connection that Fabio and I have that neither of us knew about until I read about his family. So on with the fragrances. Now, the first one is Tobacco d'Or. Now, I have to tell you that these fragrances, each one, are exceptional. They are so at the top of the game with niche fragrances. They are incredibly beautiful. Now, this one, I will spray it here. I'm wearing it right here. And I have to tell you that when I first put it on about a week and a half ago, the opening was spectacular and is spectacular. And there's an almond note in it that came up for about 15 minutes. It's so different on paper. I prefer it on my skin. But that almond note came up so sweet and so strong that at first I thought, oh, this is going to be challenging. It's very sweet. But that only lasted about 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes at the most. And then it just bloomed into a most amazing tobacco. So the top notes are guava and grapefruit. They're subtle, they're very subtle because that wonderful almond comes up there and just explodes and then settles down and reveals the heart notes of pepper, myrrh, benzoin, and heliotrope. And the benzoin and the myrrh give it an oriental richness. And then with the vanilla that comes up in the base and the tonka bean and the patchouli and that wonderful tobacco, which just swirls around in tendrils of exoticism, I would say. It is listed as a woody floral musk, but to me, this is an incredible oriental. I would wear this on a warm summer evening, just as the sun has gone down, out on the patio. It just engenders this feeling of rich luxury. And of course, in the wintertime, it would be great too, because then it envelops you with all this great warmth. So now on to the second one, which is a Chypre Clair. It opens with petitgrain, lemons, Persian lemons to be exact, petitgrain and lime. And I would say that this is one of my favorite Chypres. I love a beautiful Chypre, and just incredible. Now, it has a note in it of bamboo, and I have not smelled many fragrances with bamboo in it, but boy, is it a beautiful green note. It is perfect for summer. There's also a lot of aquatic flowers, like something like water lily in there. And the dry down in this is both vetiver and oak moss. Now I'm wondering how he does that oak moss, because it's illegal to use it, but there is an oak moss accord, which is really lovely. So this too is an excellent, excellent fragrance. I'm just so utterly impressed by the House of Condé. So the next one and the final one is Cuir Vert, green leather. So let's explore this one. There is something about this opening of Cuir Vert that is very, it's very gourmand, and it reminds me of the smells in the markets that I used to smell when I went to school in Guadalajara in Mexico. There is this wonderful spiciness to it. It really is unusual and delicious. So the opening notes on Cuir Vert are lemon, guava, and yuzu. It's a very light citrus opening, but it gives way. It gives way to a cypress center with a little birch in there and just a pinch of oud. So that's probably what's giving me that spicy, that woody kind of, that smell that I smelled in the markets in Guadalajara was kind of like open wood fire kind of smell, and spicy. And in the dry down is frankincense, a kind of mentholy frankincense. And then, of course, there's a leather and saffron. There you go, the saffron for the cooking. But it is a really unusual leather. It's not heavy, heavy, heavy leather. It's kind of a dance between the leather and the woods in it. The birch and the leather kind of do a dance together. And that oud is just kind of complementing, which is really, really smart. It's not oud heavy at all. It's very, very complementary. Used as, like in cooking, as if it were a spice rather than the main dish. So there you have these incredible 3 fragrances from the House of Condé. I wanted to show you also there is the family crest there you can see it. These 3 wonderful fragrances by Fabio Condé from the House of Condé, Condé Parfum. And I want to thank Fabio for sharing these with me and allowing me to share them with you. I'll put a link down below to his site and you can find out. It's in Portuguese and I believe French and English. So there you have it. This is Lionel Smith from Sense Memory saying, remember, wear what you love and not what they say you should like. Cheers.